I had been working night patrol for many years, and I thought I had seen almost everything. Most nights felt the same to me. I would drive through quiet roads, respond to calls, write reports, and move on. Things rarely stayed in my mind for long, but there was one night that never left me. I still think about it when everything gets too quiet. It was late October, and the air felt cold and damp. I was driving slowly through a rural neighborhood, the kind with small houses spaced far apart, surrounded by trees and open land. It was around 2:40 in the morning when I got a call about a possible emergency. Someone had reported hearing a woman screaming from a nearby house. By the time the call was made, the screaming had already stopped. I was only a few minutes away, so I headed there right away. The road was empty, and a light rain had started falling. The ground reflected the dim streetlights, making everything look still and flat. When I reached the area, I saw the house sitting quietly like the others. No lights were on inside. Nothing looked out of place at first. I parked a short distance away and walked toward the house. As I got closer, I noticed the front door was slightly open. That made my body tense right away. I stopped for a moment and listened. I heard nothing but the soft rain hitting the ground. I stepped onto the porch and pushed the door open slowly. The inside of the house looked normal. The living room was clean and still. Nothing looked broken or disturbed. I moved carefully, checking each corner. My footsteps sounded too loud in the silence. I walked into the kitchen next. There was a glass sitting on the table with some water still in it. That detail stayed in my mind. It meant someone had been there not long ago, but the house felt empty. As I moved down the hallway, I checked each room one by one. A small bathroom, a guest room, both empty. Everything looked neat. Nothing showed signs of a struggle. But something felt wrong. I could not explain it. It was just a heavy feeling in my chest. At the end of the hallway, I saw the stairs leading upstairs. As I stepped on the first stair, I heard a faint sound from above. It was soft, like something moving slowly across the floor. I froze and listened. The sound stopped. I continued up, moving slowly. My light pointed straight ahead. At the top, there were 3 doors. 2 were closed, and 1 was slightly open. That open door pulled my attention right away. As I stepped closer, I heard another small movement from inside that room. My body felt tight. I pushed the door open wider and stepped in. The room looked like a bedroom. The bed was messy, with sheets hanging off the side. A lamp was knocked over on the floor. That was the first clear sign that something had happened. I checked the closet and under the bed. There was no one there. The window was closed and locked. I stood still for a moment, trying to understand what I was seeing. It did not make sense. If someone had been there, where did they go? I moved to the next room. It looked like a child's room, with toys scattered around. It was empty. The last room was the bathroom. As I walked toward it, I noticed something dark on the carpet near the door. I crouched down and looked closer. It was wet. When I touched it with my glove, I knew what it was. It was blood. My heart started beating faster. The air felt colder. I opened the bathroom door and turned on the light. There were streaks of blood on the floor leading to the bathtub. I pulled back the shower curtain quickly. The tub was empty, but there was more blood near the drain. It looked like someone had been standing there bleeding. I checked every corner of the bathroom, but there was no one inside. At that moment, I realized something important. There was blood, but no person. That made everything worse. I went back into the hallway and listened carefully. The house was silent again. Then I heard a faint sound from downstairs. It was soft, like a floorboard creaking under weight. I turned and looked down the stairs. The darkness below felt deeper than before. I stood there for a few seconds, trying to control my breathing. Then I started going down slowly. When I reached the bottom, I checked the living room and kitchen again. Everything looked the same. But then I noticed a door near the refrigerator that I had not paid attention to before. It was slightly open now. I was sure it had been closed earlier. I walked toward it and opened it wider. Behind it was a narrow staircase leading down into a basement. I reached for the light switch, but nothing happened. The stairs below were completely dark. I stood there for a moment, then started going down. Each step felt heavy. The air grew colder as I went deeper. The basement was unfinished. The floor was concrete and the walls were bare. There were boxes stacked along one side. In the center of the room, I saw a chair. It was a metal folding chair. Under it was a large pool of blood, much bigger than what I had seen upstairs. There were plastic ties attached to the armrests. They had been cut. I felt a deep sense of fear then. Something very bad had happened there. I moved my light slowly across the room. That was when I saw movement in the far corner. A dark shape shifted quickly behind the boxes. My body reacted before I could think. I moved toward it, but the figure moved fast. It ran toward a small window near the ceiling. I heard glass breaking. By the time I reached that corner, the window was shattered. The person had already gone through it. I climbed out after them, cutting my hand on the broken glass. Outside, the rain was still falling. I saw a dark shape running toward the edge of the property. I chased, but the ground was wet and uneven. The figure disappeared into the darkness before I could catch up. I stopped and stood there, breathing hard, listening. There was nothing. The night swallowed everything. Later, more officers arrived. The house was searched again. The man who lived there was missing. His belongings were still inside. The blood matched him, but not enough to prove what happened. No one ever found him. The person I chased was never identified. The call had come from someone who said they heard a woman screaming, but there was no sign of any woman ever being there. That part stayed with me the most. Even now, when I drive past that house, it looks normal. A new family lives there. Children play outside during the day. The lights are warm at night. But every time I pass it, I remember the silence inside. I remember the blood, the empty rooms, and the feeling that something had been moving just out of sight. And sometimes, in very quiet moments, I feel that same heavy silence again, like something is still there, waiting where no one can see it. I remember that night very clearly even now. I was living alone in a small house in the countryside in the United States. The house stood far away from other homes, with only empty fields and a long dirt road around it. There were no streetlights and no close neighbors. At night, everything became very dark. The only sounds I could hear were the wind moving through the grass and small insects outside. At first, I liked that quiet. It made me feel calm. It made me feel like I was far away from everything. But slowly, that quiet started to feel heavy. I had moved there because it was cheap and I wanted to save money. My life was simple. I went out during the day, came back before dark, ate, and rested. I always locked my doors early. I did not like being outside after sunset. The darkness in that place felt deeper than normal, like it covered everything. After a few weeks, I started to feel something strange. It was not a sound. It was not something I could see. It was just a feeling. I would be sitting inside and suddenly I would feel like I was not alone. I would look around slowly, checking every corner, but there was nothing there. The house would be empty just like always. I told myself it was just stress. I tried to ignore it. But the feeling did not go away. It started coming more often, especially at night. When I lay in bed, I felt like something was watching me. My body would feel tight, and I did not want to move. I would listen very carefully, but the house stayed silent. That silence started to feel wrong. One evening, I came home just before dark. The sky was gray and the air felt cold. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. At first, everything looked normal, but then I noticed something small. A chair in the living room was not in its place. It was turned slightly, like someone had moved it. I stopped and stared at it. I always kept things neat. I knew where everything should be. I tried to remember if I had moved it before leaving, but I could not be sure. I told myself I must have forgotten. That was the only thing that made sense. That night, I could not sleep well. Every small sound made me open my eyes. The feeling of being watched felt stronger. It felt closer. I kept the lights on, hoping it would help. The next morning, I paid more attention. Before leaving, I looked at every room. I made sure everything was in place. I tried to remember it clearly. When I came back later, I checked again. At first, everything seemed fine. Then I saw a picture frame on the wall. It was slightly tilted. I knew I had left it straight. My chest started to feel tight. I fixed it and stepped back, but something inside me told me this was not normal. Over the next few days, more small things changed. A cup would be in a different spot. A door would be slightly open when I knew I had closed it. A book would not be where I left it. Each time I tried to explain it, I told myself I was forgetting things. I told myself I was tired. But deep inside, I felt something was wrong. One night, I decided to test it. Before going to bed, I placed a chair right in front of my bedroom door. I pushed it tight so the door could not open without moving it. Then I lay down and kept my eyes open for a long time. The room felt heavy. The air felt still. At some point, I fell asleep. When I woke up, the lights were still on. I looked at the door. The chair was not there anymore. It was pushed to the side. My body went cold. I had no memory of moving it. I had no memory of waking up, but the chair had moved. I stayed in bed until morning. I did not move. I did not sleep again. When the sun came up, I slowly got up and checked the house. Everything looked normal again. That made it worse. It felt like whatever had happened was careful, like it only moved small things. That day I thought about something I had never checked before: the space under the house. There was a small door outside that led to a crawl space. I had never opened it. I always thought it was empty. I went outside slowly. The air felt cold, and the ground was hard. I stood in front of the small door and looked at it for a long time. Then I opened it. A dark space stretched inside. I could smell dirt and something else, something old. I got a flashlight and pointed it inside. At first I saw nothing. Then I saw marks in the dirt, long lines like something had been moving there again and again. I moved the light further. There were small pieces of trash, an old bottle, pieces of cloth, things that did not belong there. My hands started shaking. I understood something in that moment. I was not alone in that house. I closed the door and went back inside. My heart was beating very fast. I locked every door and window. I sat in the living room and tried to think. Nothing made sense. I had never heard anyone. I had never seen anyone. But something had been there. That night, I did not go to bed. I sat in a chair with the lights on. I stayed very still. The house felt different now. It did not feel like mine anymore. After some time, I heard a sound. It came from the floor, a soft movement, slow and careful. I held my breath and listened. The sound stopped. Then it started again. It felt like something was moving under me. I did not move. I did not make a sound. I just sat there, feeling like something was right below me. The night felt very long. Every minute felt slow. My eyes stayed on the floor like I was waiting for something to come up. Nothing did, but the feeling stayed. When the sun finally came up, I stood up slowly. I packed my things quickly. I did not look around too much. I did not want to notice anything else. I walked out of the house and closed the door behind me. I did not go back. I left everything else there. Even now, I still think about that place. I think about the quiet. I think about the small changes. I think about the feeling of being watched. The worst part is not knowing how long it had been there. Not knowing how many nights it had been under me. Not knowing if it ever came up when I was asleep. That thought still stays with me. And sometimes, when I am alone in a quiet place, I feel that same heavy silence again. I had been working with my canine partner for years, and I trusted him more than anything. He was calm, trained, and never afraid. I had taken him into dark woods, empty buildings, and dangerous situations, and he never once hesitated. That was why the night everything changed stayed with me. It started with a call about a suspect who had run from officers. I was told the man had been chased through backyards and disappeared near a house on a quiet rural road. The gate to the yard had been left open, and the back door of the house was unlocked. That was enough to make everyone uneasy. When I arrived, the area felt too quiet. The house stood alone, with a wide yard and no lights on inside. The officers who were already there had checked part of the house but did not feel safe clearing the rest. They believed someone could still be inside. I put my dog on a short leash and stepped inside. The air felt still, like the house had been closed up for a long time. The first floor looked normal. Nothing was broken. Nothing was out of place. It did not look like someone had forced their way in. My dog moved slowly from room to room, sniffing carefully. He stayed focused just like he always did. We cleared the living room, the kitchen, and the laundry area. Everything was empty. Then we moved upstairs. The hallway was narrow with 3 rooms and a bathroom. There was no air moving at all. The windows were shut, and the air felt heavy. My dog checked the first bedroom, then the second. Both were empty. Then he pulled me toward the bathroom. Inside, everything looked clean. Nothing was out of place. He sniffed along the floor and near the sink. Then suddenly, he froze. His body went stiff. His ears moved forward. A low growl came from his throat. I had never seen him react like that before. He was not confused. He was afraid. He turned and stared out into the hallway. I stepped back with him and looked in the same direction. At the end of the hallway, I saw something standing near the last room. It was a tall figure, completely still. It did not move. It did not react. It just stood there. I felt my chest tighten. I knew every officer on scene. No one else was upstairs. I focused on the figure, trying to understand what I was seeing. My dog pulled back hard on the leash. He did not want to go toward it. The figure slowly turned and walked into the last room. I stood there for a second, trying to decide what to do. Then I started moving forward. My dog resisted the entire time. He kept pulling back like he was trying to stop me. When I reached the doorway, he refused to come any closer. I stepped inside alone. The room was empty. There was a bed against the wall and a dresser across from it. Nothing else. No person. No movement. I checked under the bed and inside the closet. There was no one there. The window was closed. I stood in the middle of the room, feeling something I could not explain. It felt wrong. The other officers came upstairs a few minutes later. They checked everything again. Every wall, every corner. There was nowhere for anyone to hide. My dog stayed in the hallway. He would not step into the room no matter what. I had never seen him act like that before. We left the house after that. Outside, the air felt normal again. My dog calmed down once we got away, but he kept looking back toward the house. That should have been the end of it, but it was not. Sometime later, I was working another night shift in a small rural town. A storm had knocked out power across the area. The roads were wet, and the sky was dark with heavy clouds. I was parked alone when I got a call about someone claiming they had been kidnapped. The call had ended suddenly. I was the closest one, so I drove to the address. Another officer arrived just before me. The house looked old and neglected. The yard was overgrown, and the windows were blocked by thick bushes. Everything about it felt wrong. We walked up to the front door and waited. After a moment, I heard slow footsteps inside. They stopped right behind the door. I felt like someone was watching me. The door opened slightly and a man looked out. His face looked tired, and his eyes did not seem right. I could not explain it, but something about him made me uneasy. I stepped inside after getting permission to check the house. The smell hit me immediately. It was strong and unpleasant. The living room was messy, covered in trash and dirty items. It looked like no one had cleaned in a long time. I moved forward slowly, scanning everything. Then I saw something on the floor. It was a small toy. It looked new, like it did not belong in that house. I stared at it for a moment. It made no sense. The man had said he lived alone. The feeling from earlier came back. That same quiet, that same pressure in my chest. I kept moving deeper into the house, but every step felt heavier than the last. I felt like I was walking into something I did not understand. Even now, I still think about those nights. I think about the figure in the hallway. I think about the empty room. And I think about that house with the toy on the floor. Some places feel wrong in a way that cannot be explained. And sometimes, even when nothing is there, it still feels like something is watching.